Hey there, Python pioneers, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Collatz sequence and how we can write a program to solve it, or actually perform the algorithm for the Collatz sequence. This is part of the Automate the Boring Stuff, Chapter 3. At the very end of the chapter, they have a project that they want you to try to complete. And we're going to do that together. I haven't done it yet, so I have some of the text from the book here in Mu as a multi-line comment, just so we don't have to hop back and forth. And we're just going to do it together. I think it'll be fun. So I'm going to read to you what the book says about the Collatz sequence and what we need to do. So we need to write a function named Collatz that has one parameter named number. Okay, and I'm going to show you something here, just to pause for a second. If you read all this, it can get a little overwhelming, and you don't know where to start. So usually when I read something like this, what I like to do is read the whole thing just to get an idea of what the end goal is. And then I go back and I read it one line at a time, and I start doing some of the things that it says. So let's just read it all and then we'll do that. So starting back on line 3, if the number, that's a parameter, is even, then the Collatz function should print the number divided with floor division or integer division divided by 2 and return this value. If the number is odd, then the Collatz function should print and return 3 times the number plus 1. Then we want to write a program that lets the user type in an integer, and we want to keep calling that Collatz function on the number until the function returns the value 1. So amazingly enough, this sequence actually works for any integer sooner or later. Using this sequence, you'll arrive at 1. Even mathematicians aren't sure why. Your program is exploring what's called the Collatz sequence, sometimes called the simplest impossible math problem. Remember to convert the return value from input to an integer with the int function. Otherwise, it will be a string value. That's a good call out. Hint, an integer number is even if the number mod 2 equals 0, and it's odd if the number mod 2 equals 1. And if you remember, mod is just the remainder after dividing with integer division. So if you divide a number by 2 and there's nothing left over, then the mod is 0. If you divide a number by 2 and the remainder is 1, then but before you start trying to get into fractional division, then the number's odd. So if 2 fits in completely, then it's even, which makes sense, right? And if 2 doesn't fit in evenly, then it's not even. It sounds too simple when I say it like that. Okay, and we also want to add input validation using try except, which we just talked about in the last video, to detect whether the user types in non-integer strings. Okay, so let's start at the top again. We want to write a function named Collatz, okay? So we're going to write out the keyword def for define, and we're going to write out Collatz. And we're going to put parentheses for the function name, or not for the function name, to basically, say it's a function. And now we need to add in that parameter. They wanted us to name it number. So we're going to type in number and put our colon and press enter. Okay. So let's see. If the number is even, then we should print and return. So we need to figure out if the number is even or odd, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. So if we come down here in the Collatz function, we want to figure out if this number is even or odd. So if number mod 2 equals, right? You don't want to do 1 equal, or that's trying to set a value. Testing for equality equals 0, colon, then we want to go into the if clause. So if the number is even, let's add a comment. If the number is even, then we want to print the number. Simple enough. And then we want to return the value. Is that what it said? Should print the number mod 2 and return this value. Oh. Okay, so we want to return. Okay, actually I almost got these mixed up. So we want to print the number with floor division. So we want to print whatever the result is of floor division using 2 on number. How many times does 2 fit into the number? So if it's 8, it's going to return 4. If it's 9, this wouldn't run because 9's not even. And then return that value. Okay, so we want to return number divided by 2 using floor division. Okay, else then the only other option is odd, so we could actually just do else here. There we go. Else we want to print, what do they want us to print? If a number is odd, then Collatz should print and return 3 times the number plus 1. Okay, so we're just gonna, if the number's odd, we're just gonna print the number and then return 3 times the number plus 1, right? Yep. Okay. Okay. So we're just starting simple first, and we'll add in some input validation in a second. Okay, and then we want to write a program that lets the user type in an integer and keep calling Collatz on that number until the function returns a value of 1. Okay, so now that we have our function defined to perform the Collatz sequence, let's just write main. Def main. We're going to start doing this from now on. Let's see. There's something I really wanted to do. There's something that we want to start doing. So we want to start saying if, at the very bottom here, we're going to say if name underscore underscore equals underscore underscore main underscore underscore colon, we're going to call main. Okay, and what that will do is if we run this program, we are only going to actually execute the code in this program if we are running it directly. If we ever import this file in another program, because maybe we want to get that Collatz function and we want to use the import statement to import our file and already have our definition for Collatz, we don't want the code to run, right? We only want it to run and do what we're asking the user for input and all that. The stuff we're going to put in main, we only want main to run if you're actually running the program. If you import it, you don't want it to run. So we're going to start doing that now. And in main, just as a proof of concept here, if we just type out print and test, and then we run this, all that happens is test, right? We defined a function, but we never used it. So now let's actually use it. They want us to keep calling Collatz on that number until the function returns the value of 1. That sounds like we don't know how many times we need to loop, but we need to loop until we reach a certain condition. So that sounds like a while loop to me. So we'll say while. Actually, what we're going to do first is we're going to take in the input, and we're going to use a while loop. But first, the way I want to write it, we're going to say user input equals input, and we're going to say prompting them, we'll use double quotes, enter a number. Okay, and then we'll say while user input does not equal 1. You said 1, right? Yeah. Until the function returns a value of 1. So we'll say while user input does not equal 1, we're going to call the Collatz, and we're going to set user input equal to Collatz user input. So basically, while our user input does not equal 1, we're going to call the Collatz function with whatever the number was that they provided. Then, whatever the Collatz function returns, it's either going to return the number divided by 2 using floor division, or it's going to return 3 times the number plus 1. Whatever that value that it evaluates to, that number is going to get set to the user input variable. Then it's going to check on the while condition and see, does the user input now equal 1? If it doesn't, then we're going to call the Collatz function again, take that value, check it, and we're going to keep doing that until the Collatz function equals 1. So let's just try that out and see what happens. So 10. Uh-oh, we have an error. Not all arguments converted during string. Oh, I already know what happened. I left off something very important. What could we have left off? Aha! We took in input from the user, but we didn't convert it to an integer. So let's make sure that we do that with our input validation, right? So we don't have an input validation for if they provide like the word 20, or anything like that. If we're not even trying to convert to an int right now, so it's never going to work. So let's just say int. So we're just going to wrap that in an int function so that whatever they pass in, we're going to convert to an int, and we'll handle some more input validation in a second. So if we use the number 10, the Collatz sequence is 558421. Interesting. It's getting a little out of hand there. Okay. So, let me just check real quick. What was the example that they gave? They didn't tell us. Well, I'm going to assume that it's working right because I'm looking at the code and I think that we did it all right. But if you're seeing this, we did it right. Because if we did it, I wouldn't have uploaded this. Okay. So we have the user input, but what about if they pass in like the word 20, right? We get the value error. So this is where we're going to bring in the try. And we're going to just go ahead and we're going to say try user input equals this, and accept type error. Oh, type error. Let's see. Print out. Please provide a valid number. We'll say integer. Please provide a valid integer. Now, if we run that, it's not going to actually ask the user again, right? So we really need to throw this in a, we'll just throw it in while true. Got to have that capital T. I'm going to hold Alt, drag down, and then I can just move all those at once. So try this. If we get an error, basically try again. And then if we don't get an error, let's break. So if this line runs and we have no error, then break. Otherwise, print this error message, try again. Let's try that. If we enter the word 20. Oh, it's a value error. Wait, what did I do wrong? Invalid literal for int. Oh, it's not a type error, it's a value error. So we need to actually change this to value error. Okay, let's try that. So 20. Oh, so if I just type in random stuff, it doesn't work. If I type in a number, it worked. Awesome. Okay, so we used our try except to do some input validation. Yeah, I think we checked all the boxes. Let's see if we're missing anything. Convert, return value. Yep, we missed that the first time. Yeah, that looks like we did it. Awesome. Let me just scroll out. So if you want to pause, you can see the full thing. And just a reminder here, you know, without this last line of code, so with this commented out at the bottom, you know, if we run the program right, the program doesn't run because main isn't being called. Now, if we, this is helpful because if we were to import this script file as a module in another script or program, then nothing will happen, but we can still call that Collatz function. We could also call main, but that would be weird. But you could call main. But the idea is, if I don't have this, let me keep that commented out. The idea is that if I just leave main being called down here, then no matter what, when you import this file into another program, it's going to run main, and that's not very useful. So you want to have this special check that just says if name equals main, if name equals main, then run main. And we're doing this so that there's nothing defined in the global scope except functions. That's what we want. We don't want any variables in global scope because that's bad practice. If you're writing code in the global scope, you're writing a script. If you write with everything in functions like this, you're actually, you're writing a program. You're getting much more into writing a program territory at least, because you really don't want to write and have global variables. It's just very bad practice. So from now on, we're going to start trying to write everything in main, and we'll call the main function at the bottom like this. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this live coding session, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I appreciate your time.